My cat is sitting right next to me, staring, and it's making me uncomfortable. What do you want, hon? You have litter on your nose. Oh my god. No Man's Sky, a procedurally generated space exploration and base building resource gathering game that released in 2016. This video will be looking at No Man's Sky from the perspective of a VR experience though. Should you get it? And what's it like behind a headset? Let's talk about it. The shorter, and I use that loosely, review is this. Not for the faint of heart. I don't recommend this game for VR if you have any issues with VR sickness or don't quite have your VR sea legs seasoned. With that said, they do offer comfort settings, but even still, I'd avoid flying your ship if you're feeling doubtful, as that can be a frustrating experience if you're just getting into VR. Also, keep in mind that this game seems to be intended to play sitting down, even in VR. The UI and HUD interfaces don't lock to your head orientation, which I find really strange and is the biggest complaint I have in terms of comfort. Not being able to comfortably turn around IRL without losing orientation of my in-game body is definitely frustrating. I often lose my multi-tool because I play while standing, and when I reach over my shoulder to grab my multi-tool, I find that I've positioned myself away from my in-game body enough that the game doesn't register me grabbing it. I'm just not someone who likes being forced to toggle turn in game. Personal preference and a bigger blunder for this game as a VR title for me. Other than that, the game is seamless from a desktop save to a VR load-in. You can pick up where you leave off and also have access to difficulty settings if you're someone who doesn't want to freak out about radiation storms or frigid cold weather depleting your exosuit while taking in the VR space vibes. You can also turn off settings that require materials to craft things if base building and exploration is something you just want to experience without the added struggle. If you do, however, like survival type games like Ark or survival Minecraft, then this plays how you expect. And if you think you'll play it on desktop anyhow and just own a VR headset that can connect to your PC, you may as well pop in there and see how it goes. Because once adjusted, familiar, and used to the gameplay, I think No Man's Sky has a lot of fun potential. It still just needs polish and some work. But yeah, I am partial and love having a game that lets me feel this free in a sci-fi space environment, and the tasks or goals you can come up with is plenty for me to keep occupied with right now, especially since friends on desktop can pop in and hang out with me while I'm in there. The game is $60 on Steam, and I will say the textures, details, and look of the game is not always giving what you may expect from a game with a price tag like this. Performance lags occasionally on my machine, and loading in can take some time, but I recommend looking at the game footage yourself, making the call, using this as further information to decide if NMS is something you feel is worth it to you. My overall opinion is that I am happy to own this game. I've gotten just over 50 hours on my saves, mostly from desktop gameplay, and I think the fact I'm able to seamlessly experience it in VR is an added bonus that makes me not regret the purchase. I can't say I have another game that I can equate to the experience No Man's Sky VR gives me. Just be aware of its shortcomings. Okay, so let's dive a little deeper. I got an itching to play No Man's Sky again, not realizing that just this past February, Hello Games released their Fractal update. Aside from a bunch of other improvements and additions, which I will add a link to the full article with a card above, the update came with a virtual reality overhaul, using their words. Now, I don't exactly know how long it had been since I last played No Man's Sky, but I think I can safely say it had been at least several months since I last logged in. So even though these aren't true first impressions, I will say it still felt pretty new popping in again for me. My initial impressions are okay. I loaded a new save so I could re-experience the tutorial from a VR standpoint, and the fact I immediately noticed my HUD would not be HMD locked definitely made me feel a certain way out of the gate. It feels strange that room scale play isn't factored in for a VR experience. Not only does being allowed to turn IRL help me with motion sickness, it just feels a lot more immersive to be able to turn without a toggle. After realizing I'd have to deal with that though, I found myself motivated to learn the controls. I acknowledge though, I am a player that will try and put up with maybe a lot more than others with a game like this. I love a sci-fi vibe, and being in VR able to pilot a ship and feel as close to an adventuring astronaut makes me fight through the shortcomings. So please keep that in mind. I am biased. Because I want to be upfront and address that the non-HMD locked menus is a pretty big blunder in my eyes in retrospect. It's my biggest complaint, and a big one at that. I am constantly frustrated by it while playing. I don't know why, but it's always something I'm adjusting around and getting annoyed at. It's just not how I play VR. I don't want to dwell on it further though, so take that for what it is and just know that it's a constant struggle for me, albeit not a completely life-ruining one. With that out of the way, I do want to talk about the things that have me rooting for NMS VR. Surprisingly, I found the tutorial pretty easy to grasp. The VR controls can be weird, but I do think they find a way to make balancing the multitude of meters, tools, and gameplay options pretty natural once you get the hang of it. I love the fact that I can look down at my wrists to see these hologram icons. Having your hands turn into a pointer finger if you place them close to the other hand is fun and feels natural to engage with your menus. I also like that the game starts you in a "I woke up and I don't remember anything, I just know I need to survive" kind of scenario. It feels dire and immerses me immediately to my character because I also have no idea what's happening. The look of the game is kind of sparse, feels vast and empty a lot of the time, but that doesn't necessarily take away from the game for me. I do enjoy choosing systems later in game to explore. It's kind of like a lottery system, cracking open a planet to see what I got when I choose to land. I get really excited when I find planets that fit an aesthetic harmony I vibe with, like this one with pinkish purple grass and bright pink and blue flora and crystals scattered about. It's amazing and adorable, and it makes me want to put down a base and portals so I don't forget and can return. But overall, yeah, the looks aren't anything stand out. I like the stylized angle they went for, but there is something lacking for me in the models, looking at it from an aesthetics point of view, but it's not ugly either. Like, gosh, I don't know. Sometimes I really get glimpses of some pretty stuff in game, which is very cool to experience in VR, and other times I don't. Gameplay is tedious and akin to games like Ark. There's a lot of focus on resource gathering, keeping track of what parts you have to build in your inventory menu so you have it to repair other pieces you need to get things like your starship up and running. It can be a lot if you're not used to games where inventory management is a key mechanism to success. You'll have refiners you need to build to convert certain materials to other materials, the whole thing. But I did mention earlier that there are settings to super fine-tune your difficulty. Like, you can turn off crafting costs if you want to go full no struggle, which I love. I don't like my games too stressful, especially in VR. So the fact I can turn off anything that makes me quicker to die so I can just bounce around in my jetpack, I don't know, it helps me a lot on the enjoyment scale. Base building mechanics are present. You can even upgrade your multi-tool to have terraforming like features. You can blast away or add terrain as you see fit. I didn't think the mechanic felt amazing for leveling out a cliffside, for instance. I had trouble adding ground and making it look smooth, but maybe there's a learning curve. Base building isn't exactly my thing in NMS. I don't particularly like the prefab options from what I've seen. Nothing gets me really excited on the furnishing front, but I did ask my friend to load in, and he has a sick underwater base that I decided to show off in this video. And that's a big part of what I think helps NMS shine as a VR option, and what I thought was missing from Cube VR in my last review. I love the fact that it has a social element to it. Because of how sparse and big this game feels, having a friend or two in there to cultivate our own tasks and goals is a huge element of favor. And the fact that my friends don't have to be forced into having a headset and can play desktop while I have my Quest on, it makes it a lot more accessible. I did make sure to do some VR base building tests to see how it feels. The snapping overall feels really nice. I felt like I could properly gauge and snap pieces together that I needed to, but again, I'd say the controls are not for the faint of heart. It's weird, like it doesn't feel bad when you learn the controls. It really doesn't to me, though I am pretty comfortable with VR games, so there's that. But there's so much, and the amount of options can feel frustrating at first when you're not comfortable yet, is what I think I feel on it. Also, it wasn't without its quirks. Things didn't always rotate or place in the most optimal way, but nothing stands out in terms of issues from the tests I did. I do also want to mention that having a bigger freighter orbital type ship is also an aspect of this game. You can store your ships on them, hire crew, and even do base building to customize it. It's a cute added element. There's more to the gameplay that I'm not going to be able to touch on too deeply, as I already had hours of footage to edit with what I did do, but from what I can tell, the Space Anomaly has ways for you to connect with other players if you need, for missions akin to fetch and retrieve quests. There's also some mild combat instances you can partake in when you run into enemies on worlds. There are space battles, which is how you attain your freighter, I believe. You can upgrade or buy new ships to pilot, and it's cool how whenever you're on a space station, if you see an NPC fly up and get out and you like their ship, you can talk to them and make an offer to purchase or trade for it. It gives you things to look out for if you're into collecting different styles of spacecraft. You can also purchase base plans and upgrade your exosuit through selling materials and gaining currency. Space stations have vendors and player customization options. You're encouraged to chat with in-game NPCs and learn the lore, it seems. And of course, you have a main quest line of figuring out who you are and all that jazz if you need a starting point to go from. So how does all this stack up in terms of replayability? Well, I say this game 100% has replayability. There is an endless amount of tasks and goals you can conjure to keep yourself entertained, but only if resource gathering, crafting, and exploration games are usually your thing. I think if you have friends who will play with you on desktop or in VR, that will definitely add to the enjoyment of replaying and consistently hopping on. Without that, I don't know if I gravitate to NMS as more than just the occasional space explorer simulator. Overall, I hope this video can help anyone who may be on the fence or may be reconsidering No Man's Sky since hearing about the recent update. It's not perfect and has its issues. I think a lot of people were hoping the VR overhaul would have included HUD locking to your HMD. It feels like a big miss. I couldn't find a setting to fix that in game. But I will say I recommend considering it either way. I again don't regret my purchase and I'm happy to have it in my library for the occasional pop in and run around. But that's all from me. Let me know your thoughts and I will see you next time. Bye. Why is this kind of weirdly fun? Like, this is strange. Look at this! This isn't right. Why? The space space station label changed to space station question mark with like artifacts and like bad weird things, and then I just landed in the space station alone and it was pitch black dark, and then there was red lights everywhere, and I didn't want to get out of my ship, and I was scared and I couldn't fly out. Oh. I was so scared. I got so scared, and I was just sitting in here, and I was just like couldn't leave because I got so scared. I got so spooked. But you know, I think I'm done. And that's that.